Welcome to 1400. This looks a little different because we're starting a new a new century. So there are a few things that we need to do before we can start our new century. So I'm not going to zoom in on this part. If you've been here before, this is Morbid's rules for how everything goes. She explains the timelines. She explains how she does all the information, how she did the life expectancy and the death rolls and all of that stuff. She goes through pregnancy percentages and everything for all of it. But most of these numbers and everything are for the beginning in the 1300s. So we are going to skip right here to the 1400s. They're the end of the Middle Ages. So I am now going to zoom in a little for us to give us a better view. By the 14th century, the dynamic force of medieval civilization had been spent, and the late Middle Ages were characterized by decline and decay. Europe did indeed suffer disasters of war, famine, and pestilence in the 14th century, but many of the underlying social, intellectual, and political structures remained intact. In the 15th and 16th centuries, Europe experienced an intellectual and economic revival conventionally called the Renaissance that laid the foundation for the subsequent expansion of European culture throughout the world. So, in the 15th and 16th centuries, we're playing in the 15th century, and it's the beginning of the 15th century. So there's not a lot of this Renaissance happening yet. That is coming later. So we're still going to have to pay a dowry, and we will figure out what it means to be poor, middle class, and rich. But I'm going to make sure we're paying these dowries this time, since I kind of stopped doing that in the last one. So it's 500, 5,000, and 10,000. So, wow. And then when our heir gets married, he receives 2,500, or ours receive 2,500. In the 1400s, our Sims can get divorced amicably. Our only the eldest male heirs can inherit. If you have no male heir, then the eldest daughter's husband may inherit. If you have no children left, then the next closest side household male will inherit. For us, that means we have Harris, and then we have Ida's husband, and then we have Kellen. No Sims can woohoo or do any similar act unless married until stated otherwise. However, if your Sim does that and has a child out of wedlock, that child cannot inherit the heir title. Your Sims cannot have any leftovers since there's no way to store food in the game. Don't do so until stated otherwise. Now, I have not been abiding by this because I feel like the ice boxes or the ice chests or whatever that could store food. But maybe I shouldn't be doing that. Maybe I should be doing cooking first thing in the morning and then letting them eat that food all day and then cooking again the next morning and not having leftovers. So that is something to think about. Maybe I will do that. We are not adopting any Sims unless it's our side household and they have no parents. So then there's things about cats and dogs and things about pregnancy stuff. If your Sim gets sick, you can't have them do medicine. You can use natural remedies. If a Sim dies, you can plead with the Grim Reaper. I only did this at the beginning with Edmund. As we all know, he kept dying. But I do not do this anymore. If somebody dies, I just say, okay, that's what the game says, and let's keep going. So I don't do that anymore, but births must occur at home, not at the hospital. Babies can only be fed through breastfeeding and not by bottle unless the mother dies, then make an exception. So this happens accidentally sometimes, especially now with the new infants and the fact that they will automatically head over and do that autonomously, and they always use a bottle, even the moms for some reason. Anyway. Then she has some pictures of some houses, the inside and outside of some houses that were built during this time. I think that looks really cool as far as giving you an idea of what things might look like or might have looked like. Then she has some pregnancy chances. These are the ones that you use for your heirs. They must use these percentages to get pregnant. Our side household marriage roles, and I have changed up the way I do the marriage roles because I want them to get married at different times. I I think it makes it more fun to have people getting married when they're young and people getting married when they're a little bit older and then never getting married. So I do want to make a couple of tweaks to it because the way it's set up right now, there's a higher percent chance that they will roll to get married in 3 years. And I have noticed that that's happening more often. And so I think I'm going to change up what the rolls are. So there'll actually be the same percentages that she has here, where there's 4 numbers that you never get married. And that's what we will end up having, is we will end up having more numbers where we never get married than we have right now. But that doesn't matter. We'll get to that when we start talking about our rolls. Death rolls. Here's one of the things. For birthing Sims, if the Sim has twins or triplets, you must roll again for each extra child. So I was doing that at the very, very beginning. And then I was told, who knows, it's been so long ago, but I was told that you're just rolling one time for giving birth in general. But now it is specifically laid out in here that we are rolling again for each child. So for the last 2 or 3 videos that I filmed in the 1300s, I did that. I rolled twice if they had twins. So this says life expectancy in the 15th century was really low. However, it did increase from the previous century. So we do not follow these numbers exactly. My thing, it does say life expectancy is now at about 48 years. So she has increased the numbers, like given people a higher chance of survival, right? Because life expectancy did increase from the previous century. So I'm going to be changing that on mine, but just a little bit. Like I'm only increasing it a tiny percentage and not as much as she did here. I am honestly not dealing with cats and dogs right now. Yes, some of our families have cats, but I can't keep up with it. And I know y'all all loved Bandit. I had so many people comment on the dog, Bandit, Daniel's dog, and how much y'all loved him. And so maybe that is something that we will do later, but I cannot make any promises right now. Now, harvesting. This is something that's going to be changing with our stuff. Here are the crops that you can grow according to each season and during this time period. So this changed, I think, a little from what it was last time. I'm not entirely sure. But it says if you're using the Ye Olde Cookbook mod, these are the fruits and vegetables that it uses. So these are our spring. Here we go. Lettuce and lemons are new that can be grown year-round. So year-round are the large fruits and vegetables. So I'm going to grow only these things during these months, these seasons, and then year-round I'm going to do mushrooms and lettuce for sure. And then I don't like that winter does not have potatoes, because I still feel like they're not potatoes in England at this point, because that's one of my staples, because they live on potato and onion soup. But with the spinach, the onion, and pear, they will be okay and be able to make it on that. So anyway, we will probably only grow watermelon in the summer, and the rest of these we will grow year-round to use in our cookbooks. So that's it until we get to the events. And the events, we're kicking it off again with the 100 Years' War. If y'all remember, that was so many of the events that we had last time. So what I do is I take my timeline and I just put a mark at 1415, because I'll know that something needs to happen at 1415, and I'll come over here and I will look at what's happening. So this is the Lancastrian War, the third and final phase of the Anglo-French 100 Years' War. It lasted from 1415, when King Henry V of England invaded Normandy, until 1453, when the English lost Bordeaux. Okay, so that's a lot. That's a long time. This is going to be half of our decade. Half of our century is going to be spent in this war in some kind of way. So starting with 1415, we roll and they go live in their camp. And then in 1420, they come home. 1425, they do these other things. So there's things happening constantly with this war from 1415 all the way till 1450. And it's a little bit different every time, which I really like. So as we go through there, you'll see, and we will do it as we get there. Then in 1450, so this ends, it says, in 1453. Then in 1455, the War of the Roses starts in England, and it is known at the time and for more than a century after as the Civil Wars. It's a series of civil wars fought over the control of the English throne in the mid to late 15th century, fought between the supporters of two rival cadet branches of the royal house of Plantagenet, Lancaster and Yorks. So that's the white and the red roses or whatever. They're roses. I think they're white and red. And that was the War of the Roses because of that. So then that is even broken down. That lasts from 1455 to 1487, and that is broken down into battles, and we will roll for that. And then in 1459, there's another one. Then in 1460, something else happens. So I love this so much. 1461 is another one. Then 1471. So they're all of these battles that are part of this that I think is fantastic. In 1485, we have our next called the sweating sickness outbreak. In 1485, the mortality rates were between 30 and 50%. So guess what we have to do? We have to use a D10, and 1 through 5 they're safe, and 6 through 10 they die. So this is exactly what it was with flipping the coin last time. 50% of our people are probably going to die. And that's it. That's how we're going to end the 1400s. So I am so excited about the history stuff that we're going to learn about what's happening over in England. If anybody has I know we're living in more places than just England, but because this work has already been done for us, for all of the stuff, those are the events that I'm going to follow. And I am fine with following other events that are happening in other parts of the world that we have family members in, but I do not have the time to go and look them up and figure that out. So if you can point me to somewhere that has the events, or if you look at the event and you're like, okay, here's what's going on and here's how I think this can be translated into the Sims, then I would love to do that as well for our family members that live in France and Romania and Ireland and potentially at some point this year, Japan. So I think that's going to do it. I said this year again, but I meant this century. The first half of the century, we're going to try to move some family members into Japan. The second half of the century, we're going to move some people into some Scandinavian countries and probably just call it Scandinavia instead of picking a specific country to call it. And I think that's going to do it though. Wow. I'm excited for the 1400s. I want to know all your thoughts down below. This video is going to come out as I am moving into my new house. Like, we should be unpacking sometime in the next couple of days. And so I have probably already filmed the 1400, but I probably have not filmed anything after that. So please let me know your thoughts on everything that we talked about. Let me know what kind of things you want to see this next century for our family. And I will just see you in my next video. Thanks for watching. Bye.